Hi, my name's Jessie Quack, and I'm the editor of the Crooked series of sci-fi crime anthologies. I'll tell you a little bit more about that after this presentation, but first I want to introduce Demaris McKenna, who's going to be reading from Volume 2 of the series, and this was originally recorded December 7th. So Caitlin is a science fiction writer and freelance editor. She currently lives, works, and writes in Vancouver, British Columbia. When she's not writing, she enjoys reading, watching video game Let's Plays, and entomology. She grew up in the Minnesota woods, where on clear winter nights she would look up at the stars and wonder. Go ahead, Caitlin.
All right, so yeah, I'm Demaris McKenna, and I write a series called The Expansion, where Earth controls the rest of the galaxy. And like the Empire in Star Wars, the Expansion is run by humans for humans, and aliens have to struggle on the margins. And this story that I'm going to read from, Risk Management, is set early in the life of one of my alien main characters. So let's go. Gal Shesharim smelled the drug operation before he saw it. Lead Row district streets were silent and dark, the industrial area minimally lit by sodium arcs every 100 feet. He'd chosen this route because it should be deserted. He couldn't afford to be seen, even in silhouette, in the Terran-run city of Diego II. But now it seemed his protective solitude was in danger. Lifting his sleek snout, Gal sniffed again. The tang of chemical byproduct burned his sensitive nostrils. Solvents, reagents, and an alkaline whiff he recognized from the final product. Someone was out here manufacturing E-caps, endorphin caplets, and they were close. Keeping to the shadows of the looming warehouses, Gal followed the gradient of scent until it disappeared under the loading door of a mid-sized warehouse. His eyes pierced the dark like it wasn't there, noting features of disuse. Peeling paint on the warehouse's walls, a heavy chain and padlock, rusty with time, barring the loading door. But the smell didn't lie. This place only looked abandoned. Crouching in the shadows across the corner from the warehouse, a wire of unease tightened under his upper set of ribs. He'd already been above ground longer than he liked. The weight of the wrapped package under his cloak called his attention. He should complete the delivery and get his payment and a few E-caps of his own for his trouble from Torres, just like always. Not go investigating not-so-abandoned warehouses and potentially getting seen. But he'd been using this route for years to ferry payments and packages between Torres and her network of dealers. It was supposed to be safe. He couldn't leave until he knew what threatened to disrupt it. Gal slunk around the back, hoping to find some vantage where he could see inside the warehouse while remaining out of sight. After a few minutes of searching, he found it. A dumpster backed up to one wall below a row of windows. Someone had done a bad job loading it, and tumbled plastic sacks leaned against the side, forming a path he could climb. His sensitive nose wrinkled at the effluvia of rotting vegetables and rancid meat emanating from the sacks, but they bore his slight weight. He set all 4 feet firmly on the top one and stretched his torso over the lip of the dumpster. There was nothing to grab, so Gal had to push with his palms flat on the metal, using friction to heave first his torso, then his sinuous lower body and legs onto the lid. Good thing I don't weigh much, he thought. Osk were not built for climbing. The prospect of the windows wiped the brief exertion from his mind. They were dusty with neglect, but not too filthy to see through. Staying low, Gal crept forward and peered inside. A large white tent hunkered in the otherwise empty space below. Shadows of indeterminate species moved inside the tent's walls. From the play of shadows on the walls, the tent was brightly lit inside, but it was tightly sealed except for a flap at one end. Hiding the light, he had time to think, before the tent flap opened and a scaly red and yellow striped head emerged. Suns! Gal instantly ducked behind the windowsill, then peeked again. The Urd didn't look toward his window. Indeed, it seemed uninterested in much beyond the small metal tin it had removed from its vest. He watched the reptilian alien stalk out of the tent, unscrewing the cap of the tin as it went. 3 meters long, from toothy snout to spine-ridged tail, with venomous claws and talons. It held its spine parallel to the ground as it walked. The Erd had evolved to run down their prey on the ancient savannas of Erdek. This was who was horning in on Taurus's territory? Gao stayed still, although the brightness of the tent should blind the Erd to any movement behind a dark window. The creature plucked up some brown mush from the tin with a claw and tucked it into its cheek before leaving from a side door. But before the tent flap swung closed, Gao glimpsed 2 more Erd inside, laboring over a chaos of tubing, vats, dials, and alembics, a manufactory, the source of the scent. His back prickled with nerves, half at his discovery, half at the thought of that Erd somewhere outside on its break. As quietly as he could, Gao slipped down the other side of the dumpster and slipped out into the night. The office had seen better days. Paper covered the windows and dust their sills. It lurked in the middle of a row of shuttered storefronts in Rush Harbor District. To the casual eye, one more failed business in this depressed area of Diego II. Gao knew better. The business here was thriving. It simply wasn't legal. He rang the buzzer and stood back so the camera above the door could see him. He hated this part. Standing exposed in the dim sodium lights, back toward the street, it made his skin itch. An eon passed in the few minutes before Taurus buzzed him in. Gao swept through the deserted lobby and through the inner door into Taurus's office. "Took you long enough," Taurus said by way of greeting. The Terran woman set down the comm unit she'd been fiddling with and straightened behind her desk. She ran one hand through her short, spiky black hair and motioned forward with the other. "Come on, give. Nice to see you too." Gao laid the package on the desk and unwrapped its brown paper sheath. A matte black oblong box was revealed. He turned it toward her and opened it. Individually wrapped endorphin caplets were piled inside the box, a treasure chest full of black pearls. Each caplet was embossed with a metallic green lowercase English E. The manufacturer of Taurus's op owned a legitimate packaging business, mostly to funnel the funds made from the sale of ECAPs, but it gave them an advantage when it came to presentation. Taurus carefully counted the caplets out. Gao watched, hoping his hunger didn't show too much on his face, knowing some of it must surely leak through. He was well acquainted with the effects of their product. The delicious, melting ecstasy of a good hit was part of why he did this job, beyond the basic needs of survival. He'd learned quickly in his time on the street that survival meant more than putting food and air in his body, more than his heart continuing to beat. It meant being able to forget, to outrun, even for a short time, the memories of when he'd had a home and a family, before the Terrans destroyed it. "It's all here." Taurus shoveled the ECAPs back into their box. "Hold tight." The package under her arm, she disappeared into a back room, emerging a few minutes later with Gao's payment. A smaller black box held the usual 7 sleek ECAPs, enough, if he rationed it, to last him a week. Beside it was a prepaid credit chit with a reader. The amount flashed up on the reader when he passed the chit over it. Acid shot through his stomach. A frown tugged at the corners of his mouth. He ducked his head to hide it, but across from him, Taurus cleared her throat. "There a problem, Shesharim?" He set the chit slowly down on the table, wary of offending Taurus with what he would say next. If she dropped him, it would deal a serious blow to his income and his supply of ECAPs, but there was no way around it. "The payment is less than I expected. The credits, that is," he clarified when her gaze darted toward the black box. "The number of ECAPs is the same." The annoyance he'd feared flashed across her face, curling her lip. She shrugged. "We've got plenty of product. Enough I don't care about skimming off the top for you. But?" he asked. She studied him, dark eyes flat, and for a moment Gao thought Taurus would tell him to get lost, to be grateful for what he had. Instead, she scoffed and said, "Customers are another story. Our street dealers have been seeing week-over-week drops in revenue. Someone's taking our business." The warehouse operation he'd seen. Could that be Taurus's unknown competitor? He drew his hands below the desk, hiding clenched fists. He should tell her. The longer the Erd were allowed to operate in secret, the more of her territory would fall, and the smaller the payments would get. He might lose her as a client altogether. But speaking up meant raising his head. It meant becoming more visible. He wouldn't be one of Taurus's anonymous couriers anymore. Being someone who had useful information could offer protection, but it also might draw the attention of the Terran powers that ran the city. Depending on what she did with the intel, civil security might come sniffing around. Then Gao would have to disappear, give up the relative stability and profitability of couriering for some smaller, meaner way to make a living. Then again, if Taurus's op failed because he kept his mouth shut, he might lose his job anyway. Even worse, he would lose it knowing he could have done something to save it. I saw something tonight, he said, on my way over here. She leaned back and crossed her arms. You mind being a little less cryptic? Gao unclenched his hands, drew a deep breath, and told her about the Erd operation.
Hi, and welcome back. I promised I'd tell you a little bit more about Crooked at the end, and here we are. So what is Crooked? It's a series of sci-fi crime anthologies that have been edited by me, and the idea is that it exclusively focuses on including stories that are part of a bigger universe. So this is what sets Crooked apart. If you came to this anthology because you wanted to read the story from one author whose series you love, hopefully you'll find another author who writes kind of in a similar style, or writes maybe something dissimilar, but just something that you're into. You can then go and read that story and be like, oh, I want more of these characters. Head to their website and find more of their work. So for example, if you love this reading, check out the show notes below and you'll get a link to the author's website. So this has been an incredibly fun anthology series to work on. Please keep an eye out for round 3, which will be coming next year sometime. And if you enjoyed this reading, please support the author. Go buy their books. Head to bit.ly/CrookedV.2 and you can find this anthology to find more of the stories. And yeah, I hope you had a really good time and take care out there. Bye.